Like, now, I know what's going to happen. Social media is going to go wild with suggestions as to why Joe Biden needed his own car, and a number of those will be unrelated to security. But anyway, I'm joined now to discuss that and more with Mariana Mancuso, who is a expert. No, who is a genius from the United States of America, who knows all about this stuff. Now listen, Mariana, Joe Biden, I mean, a separate rule for him, was it appropriate?
Look, he's the head of state here in America, and we have to do everything we can to protect the President of the United States, and we understand. And as one American to a Brit, I want to say thank you so much for acquiescing. We greatly appreciate it, and we do know that the United States worked hand in hand with the monarch and working through the entire operation of London Bridge to ensure it was the smallest footprint that America would send on a foreign convoy. He didn't come over there with normally the number of people he normally does when he travels overseas, so we do appreciate the accommodation.
Do you know what? That's actually quite a good answer. And, you know, I'm quite pleased with this. I think, actually, to be fair to Joe Biden, first of all, we didn't elect him, so it's not for me to criticise him. It's not for me to say he's good or bad. It's for me to say that we are allies of the United States of America, and he was the person elected president. It does seem to be that he has been incredibly sympathetic to the United Kingdom and incredibly supportive in a way that sometimes people feared he might not be, particularly when it came to the whole issue of Brexit and his support for the Irish Republic, which I will say I think was unfair, because it was not something potentially to explode in the way that it was exploded. But anyway, what has happened in America during this period? Does anybody care that the Queen has died? Does anybody care about the funeral? And does it change things for Britain and America?
What I can tell you is there are many Americans that are glued to their television sets, specifically my father, who cannot tear himself away from watching the processions and everything going on with the Queen's funeral. He is one of many Americans that have been watching this. And I think it's important to note here that President Joe Biden was one of 13 sitting presidents that the Queen had the pleasure to meet during her reign. Yep. And Joe Biden is working very hard to ensure that the United States is continued to see as an ally, and that he is extending his condolences on behalf of the American people.
Did the American people care?
100% they cared. I sent my condolences to the producer the day I heard the news. And on behalf of the American people, we do send our condolences.
Yeah, look, can I be honest with you? I'm not being churlish or trying to offend you, but, you know, I could understand you saying, look, it's interesting, it's a spectacle, but nobody in America cares. But I suspect, actually, the answer is this funny thing between Britain and America, which is the Americans sort of sitting there thinking, I would never have this system. It's nuts, but I quite like watching it, and there's an element of respecting it.
Well, there's a reason we broke up in 1776, but we've remained friends since then, which is great. And I think it's important to note that the Americans do continue to watch the monarchy, and they are absolutely enamored with how everything works, the pomp and circumstance. They love watching, you know, the prince and princess and now the king. It's very interesting, but in America, I can assure you that is not something that we're looking to find our way back to.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting. Funnily enough, well, this is controversial. I'm very good friends with Rebecca Mercer, who obviously is well known in the United States of America as a Republican donor. And I gave her a tour of Parliament, and I showed her some of the frescoes. And I said, look, you know, this is the history of the United States of America as well. Now, at the end of the day, the United States of America, or rather the American colonists, as they were known at the time, decided that the behaviour of the United Kingdom was inappropriate and they were going to pull away. But actually, when you're talking about the Magna Carta, when you're talking about even the Saxon law, when you're talking about those great traditions of Britain, the United States of America inherits them, just in a way that has departed from the way the United Kingdom inherits them.
Well, and I think it's important to note here that a lot of people aren't aware when it comes to American history that when the Second Continental Congress got together, they were actually looking for a way to repair relations between the Crown and America. And they were trying to figure out what to do. And it was offered up that we declare our independence. And the delegate from Virginia who suggested that was told to sit down and that they would table it until the next day. And then when they did bring it up again, they said, okay, well, we'll give it 2 weeks. And Thomas Jefferson, supposedly, rumor has it, got the short straw and had to write the Declaration. But the Declaration of Independence was actually received by the king the same time the Olive Branch petition was received by the king. And the Olive Branch petition was where we were trying to make amends and fix things. And we just couldn't get it together, so we decided to declare independence.
No, I have to be honest with you. I think anybody with any sanity would turn around and say that the American colonists made a very good point. And the point, perhaps, if an American colonist... what you would now call a citizen in the United States of America, but it predates it, so I'm not being disparaging. But what they would potentially say if they were sat here was, look, we were English citizens, British citizens, asking for English common law rights, as was our right under Magna Carta, and the king denied it. Now, ultimately, we are fighting for those rights, the rights to representation, the rights to not be abusively taxed, the right to have a degree of freedom that was laid down historically. So, look, at the end of the day, if you think about it, many parliamentarians, I think Edmund Burke, agreed with the Americans, thought they were completely right.
Absolutely. And I think, if there's one thing that I wish we could have brought over from the United Kingdom is the way that you guys handle your elections. To my knowledge, when the prime minister calls an election, there's 6 weeks until the election to campaign, and then it's all done. In America, we've been campaigning for 2024, and it hasn't even happened yet. We're still trying to get through the midterm elections here of 2022.
I've got to be honest with you. American politics. I mean, it's just. I watch these adverts. It's like. I'm going to try and impersonate it. Bob Jones voted multiple times to support HIV infections amongst young children. Bob Jones opposed it. I'm Mitchell McGuire and I've approved this message. I mean, it's all just hate-filled, isn't it?
It has definitely become vitriolic as we've seen the years pass and as we've seen, Trump.
You weren't impressed with my American impersonation, though, were you?
Actually, I think it was pretty spot on. I'll tell you right now, that's well done.
I love it where it's like in Congress, Bob Jones voted 5 times for higher taxes. Andre Walker opposed it. I'm Andre Walker. I approved this message and I'm fighting for Alabama. That's what it's all like.
That's pretty much what our campaigns look like these days. Someone was for it, someone was against it. Someone was for it before they were against it. Now they're against it, and you better vote for them. Or
Then they do the Margaret McGuire flip-flopped on the key issue. If she doesn't know what she's doing, how's she supporting you? I approve this message. I'm Andre Walker. Sorry, I'm not doing it anymore. Quite enjoyed that.
That's spot on. If you want to come over, we've got an election cycle. You can help finish out.
I was hoping to make a couple of quid off that. I mean, I can do the sinister voice, but look, I want to ask you. I mean, I'm not even looking at the sheet now because it's late. But Donald Trump, right? What's the update? In general, what's he going to do? I mean, is he running? Is he not running? Is he going to go to prison? Is he suing people? Yeah, just any of your thoughts.
A little bit of everything at this point, to be honest with you. He was in Youngstown, Ohio over the weekend with a rally, and he was out there hitting the stump and talking about all the Republicans candidates and what they're doing, what he can do if he is elected president again. He's not formally announced his 2024 run. However, we are seeing that he may wait until after the midterm to get it done and say that he will run for president again.
So, look, we can talk all day about the case against Donald Trump. The reason is we're prohibited from talking about live cases in the UK because we obviously don't want to influence juries or whatever. But we can say anything about a foreign court case because obviously we're not kind of in that country. This Donald Trump thing, I'm not convinced by it, if I'm being totally honest. I'll tell you why. Because by the very nature of being American president, you are able to have classified information and you can declassify it at a whim. I don't get why he needed to sign a form to declassify information for himself to have after the election. Surely if he kept it it had been de facto declassified?
No, he has to declassify that information, and we are still waiting to find out if, in fact, he did declassify that information. Because as somebody, as you just did the campaign ad where, you know, they flip-flopped and they were for it, they were against it. He has said it multiple turns. He has said a couple different things. I declassified that information. I never had classified information. I don't know what they found. They didn't find anything. So we haven't been able to really nail him down, which isn't surprising. I mean, this is Donald Trump. Trying to nail him down is like trying to nail slime to the wall.
But actually, I'm gonna push back slightly on this, because I actually think that the FBI are wrong. Now, bear in mind something. I am a UK political commentator, so I'm not an expert on American judicial process. I'm not an expert on American systems of government. But it seems to me, first of all, the ultimate arbiter of what is classified and unclassified is the President of the United States. I think we all know that, right? In legislative terms, I see nothing, and you can tell me I'm wrong. In legislative terms, I see nothing that requires him to sign a form to declassify things. There is custom and practice whereby normally you would sign this form, and they've made a form and whatever. But actually, I don't see anything in legislative terms that forces him to sign a form. And then he also retains the highest possible level of security clearance for the rest of his life. And so what you were talking about is this. I have this piece of paper, which is classified. I'm the President of the United States of America, and I'm the arbiter as to whether I can look at it or not. I've chosen to look at it, and I retain the right to look at it for the rest of my life, even if it's classified. But by sheer nature of leaving, I've declassified it. Where's the crime?
Well, you can't just by leaving office declassify information. You have to go through proper channels to declassify information. And on top of that, just because you have left doesn't mean you can take it with you.
Well, I don't see anything, and I might be wrong, I don't see anything in legislation that requires him to file a piece of paper with anybody to declassify it. So the point I'm making is it becomes a thought crime, doesn't it? Because if he tells you that he declassified it by only notifying himself, then he's declassified it, right? Whereas what the FBI are saying is he needs to sign a form to declassify it to go along with the process. But actually, the legislation doesn't say that.
Well, of course, there's no legislation. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says that. In the Constitution, the job of the executive branch is to uphold the Constitution, right? That is what the Constitution outlines for the executive branch. It says nothing about classified materials. Absolutely. Now, when it comes to declassifying information, the presidents must follow bureaucratic protocol, which is signing of forms, making sure everything goes through proper channels. When they leave office, a lot of the materials that the president has, signed papers, classified information, those things are actually left with the archives. They're left in the proper file boxes. They are not taken with them. This is not a poster that he just took out of the White House. These are important materials to America.
It's interesting, actually, because this is what this debate is going to come down to, or rather what this legal action is going to come down to. You say he has to follow bureaucratic process. I say he ought to follow bureaucratic process. And what that is to say is that you say that it is a criminal offence not to have followed the process. I say it is bad management not to have followed the process, but actually it doesn't make it illegal. Now, it'd be interesting to see, actually.
They don't belong to him, Donald Trump. They belong to the office of the president and to the American people. Now, remember, he has not admitted that, in fact, he took those documents, because he's actually saying that I don't know where they came from. Right. So he's going to struggle with that defense, isn't he? Well, he's going to struggle with the truth in general, but that is just Donald Trump. So we're not surprised by that.
Well, what do you think? I'm sorry for asking you this, because I know it's difficult, but what do you think happens at the next US presidential election? Because bear in mind, you understand the granular detail, but we're sat in the United Kingdom just wondering, Biden surely doesn't run for re-election. Trump does. Would he get the Republican nomination? Just update us if you could.
Looking at the 2024 presidential election, here's what it looks like right now. In an interview in 60 Minutes, Joe Biden, when asked if he would be running again for re-election, he said that he was going to assess. He is intending to, but he said, my intention to run doesn't necessarily mean that I'm automatically going to run. If he does intend to run, and he will make that announcement after the midterm election. The same thing goes for Donald Trump. Rumor had it last week he was supposed to announce that he was going to be running for re-election as president, which is weird to say re-election because he's not in office now, but to seek the presidency again. However, it looks like cooler heads have prevailed and talked him off that ledge to wait until after the midterm elections. Because here's the thing, if Trump announced last week, this week, tomorrow, 2 weeks from now, before the midterm election, which is taking place in 50 days, if he's to announce now and the Republicans lose horribly in the midterm elections, everybody will turn and point the finger to Donald Trump and blame him for the Republican loss. If he doesn't announce his reelection bid and he decides to wait till after the midterm to see how the Republicans turn out, if there is a red wave that Republicans think is going to happen, then he can turn around and take a victory lap and say that's because of him. Look what he did. He did so great for the Republicans. He's the best. Oh my gosh, you have to reelect him to the presidency. Meanwhile, Joe Biden thinks that he will. It has been pointed out that he's the oldest president right now at 79 years old, but he says, look at me, I'm in great fitness shape. It doesn't matter. I can run if I want, but I have yet to make that decision.
Absolute masterclass. I've got to be honest with you. You know, I don't dislike Joe Biden, but he is feeling a little creaky. Anyway, Marianne, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I mean, look, you know, we live in interesting times. All sorts of things have happened, both in the United Kingdom and indeed in the United States of America. We're going to continue to take your calls and indeed read your texts and indeed read your tweets straight after this.